Mohammed Joshua, reporting for ADBN News.
Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution says responding to illicit economies and instability is a task that requires a collaboration and partnership across different stakeholders. IPCR and Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime gave the submission at the inaugural meeting of the National Working Group on Illicit Economies and Instability in Nigeria. The meeting held in Abuja brings together a network of stakeholders from government, civil societies, and multilateral organizations to engage in responding to the crisis. Our correspondent Assam Raphael has details.
A report by Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, GI-TOC, shows that the role of illicit economies as drivers of instability is undeniable. In Nigeria, this has contributed significantly to instability and insecurity. In an attempt to address this crisis, stakeholders emphasize the importance of illicit economies and instability on local communities and the broader society, convened to share knowledge and provide a pathway for policymakers to respond to illicit economies and instability effectively.
These stakeholders who are actively engaged in responding to illicit economies and instability and its impact on local communities and the broader society in Nigeria have been convened to share knowledge and experiences to strengthen the collective expertise and capacity of the actors involved, as well as build sustainable multi-stakeholder coalition, designing and implementing evidence-based responses to criminal markets, and to provide a clear pathway for policymakers to respond to illicit economies and instability in Nigeria.
The essence or the rationale for this national group is to address the need for such collaborative and this collaborative effort to respond to illicit economies and instability, because what we see is there's a gap in terms of engagements and collaboration between key stakeholders. So the National Working Group on Illicit Economies and Instability provides a platform where different stakeholders can exchange ideas, exchange best practices in ways that can empower them to respond to illicit economies and instability more effectively.
They stated that the issue will continue to be at the top burner until policies are put in place to mitigate it.
We'll continue to put the issues on the top burner, continue to ensure that both research, practice and policy, have a meeting point, to ensure that we mitigate some of these issues, either in the mining sector, in the petroleum sector, in the farmer header crisis, like cattle rustling, and all the various respective areas whereby organized crimes are trying to get their footholds, to ensure that we are able to beat them to it.
The point we try to make, and we also always emphasize, is that there's need, in addition to military operations, to kinetic responses to criminality, we think there's also need for development-oriented responses, especially in local communities involved in non-violent illicit economies. So rather than crackdowns alone, we encourage that stakeholders should consider development-oriented programming that can empower people and discourage them and make them discourage them from engaging in illicit activities and making them less vulnerable to being recruited in criminal networks.
They hope that this will afford them the opportunity to breed more formidable responses to illicit economies and instability in Nigeria, especially within the context of strengthening national security for peace and prosperity. Awesome Raffle, ADBN News.